It's my pleasure to introduce Nancy Young, who is a long-time many generations family here in Winthrop, the Penniman family. She's been doing, I know you've been doing this for a long time. and there are examples here that she's left, and I don't like stepping on them, but I know that I can and I should, but they're beautiful. And so she's going to talk to us and tell us all about her rug braiding. So please welcome Nancy Young.
Goes well because I have family here and I'll never hear the end of it. Anyway, I'm going to start out with about 15 minutes of telling you how I got started doing this, and then take you into a slideshow or a show that was done on video of me 2 years ago for the Guild, the Rug Braiding Guild. Can you all hear me? I'm told that the sound is very good. Okay. Because it's quite a history and I'm very pleased with it, although it was not the way I made a living. I was a math teacher actually for many years. You make a little more money doing that than braided rugs. Anyway, I got started in 1956. What card? Oh, and my daughter will ultimately help me and advise me. I hope we can speak together by the time this is over. We don't end up arguing, but anyway. Okay, in 1956, I was here in Maine with my mother, who had been recently widowed, and I had a baby. My husband was in the off the sea in the Korean conflict. And I guess I felt bad for her. She was a widow. My father, Edgar Penniman, grew up in Winthrop many, many years ago. And he went to Hebron Academy and left the state to make more money in the early 1900s. And he ended up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And so he built Winthrop Beach camps on Lake Maranacook so that when he retired, because his expertise was in taxes, and it makes sense that if you are making money that you can defer the tax till you retire, makes a little bit of sense. Anyway, we ended up with 12 cottages on Lake Maranacook, which was built by his brother, Earl Penniman, and his brother took care of their mother, who lived with them until she passed away while we were down in Pennsylvania. So my dad built these cottages and my mother inherited them, of course, to run when he passed away. And so we were both up here in 1956. I was a new baby and she a widow. And we were getting the cottages ready to be rented to a lot of out-of-state people. Many people came in for 1 or 2 weeks. There was no air conditioning in the cities then. And coming to a lake made a lot more sense. And we all know that the trains brought people to Maranacook Lodge, which was built for their convenience also. But anyway, I remember seeing an ad in Good Housekeeping saying that, showing a picture of a rug in black and white, not even in color, and said you can make this very inexpensively and very quickly and an heirloom for life. And I looked at it, my mother said, well, if you want to do it, honey, we can look up some wool and get started. So that's how I started braiding rugs. And of course, eventually my husband got out of the service and we moved away and I ended up braiding enough rugs for the home we lived in. I did teach it for a little while when we moved in Pennsylvania to a place in Lidditz. And then when we moved again and I got a real job where we had more money and we didn't need braided rugs, we got wall-to-wall carpeting. I do think that some of us that do handiworks do not appreciate the fact that when you make something by hand, it's very special. But if you do it because you are saving money, which is why I did it, it loses its value. And I'm finding now that, frankly, I don't know how much you know about braided rugs, because even back then, well, anyway, I taught school, put away the rugs, and then I gave one of the things I'll show you. I made a rug for my daughter, who's back here. She's over 20 now. Okay, and I got it clean and gave it to her for her apartment, and I couldn't believe how well wool cleaned. If you maybe some of you recall that years ago the synthetic rugs came in the 50s and 60s, and then everybody had wall-to-wall carpeting, which of course everyone thought was, you know, wonderful. You could clean it; it was cheap and so forth. Up until that time, braided rugs were mainly made by old ladies who lived with their children and used fabric that was disposed of, or they got it from a mill here. And of course, these mills up here, we have the second largest mill in the country in here in Maine. And that's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because this is where I ended up having my rug camps, which I started in the 1990s when we retired up here. Now, I thought I would tell you a little bit about what rug braiding is. I don't know how many, have any of you here braided a rug? Ah, I see. Okay, very good. Well, then you know a little bit about it. Rug braiding is a poor man's craft, unlike rug hooking, which tends to be for the more wealthy people who can afford to get exact colors, which are perfectly dyed to make pictures of dogs and so forth. And I think therefore hooked rugs are far more protected. They weren't sold because they were too much labor to sell them to anyone. But braided rugs were made very casually, and they were used hard by the families, and they didn't care about much what happened to them. And my own personal opinion is they probably were thrown out when they got, beyond a certain point and not kept as prizes. And that's the problem. There is no indication there were any braided rugs in the United States before 1830. And I find that hard to believe, but until there is, some places won't even allow you to put a braided rug in their historic place if they're sticking to the time limit that they want to, make sure that it is within that framework. And I even asked at Williamsburg, and no, I think if they find braided rugs down there, it will be in the slave quarters, where the poor people had the braided rugs. The more wealthy had the imported rugs from England. And a few people had rugs that their grandmothers handed down. Do any of you have braided rugs that belong to someone before you, a grandmother or a mother still? Oh, good. I do hope. Hi, I know you. I'm looking around thinking, I don't know any people here. Even though, as I told you, my family goes way back. My maiden name is Penniman, which may not resonate with you, but the Pennimans in Winthrop were rather important years ago. I had, as I told you, maybe I didn't, my great-grandfather owned a store in the great big brick building, which is frankly ugly, but it was there. And I think at one time was mayor of the town. That was in 1890 or whatever, something like that. But anyway, I've come here since I was a child. And my two brothers and I inherited one of the cottages on the lake that was left in my family. And that's why I'm still here. Okay, so how do we braid a rug? The best braided rugs are braided with wool, because wool has a resiliency that other fabrics don't have. It's bright colors. It doesn't fade like cotton does. And of course, in the earlier days, there were lots of it because we wore wool coats. And the mills up here made wool here in Cascade. I mean, not Cascade, excuse me. It was, what was the name of this mill? Cascade was in Waterville. Carlton, thank you. Okay, and I ended up getting a tax number so I could buy the wool there. Anyway, I started braiding rugs and I was not very good at it at first, but when you make mistakes, you start learning more and then you get better. The wool we use, well, I can't believe, oh yes, stand back, so blinding me. It's amazing because back in the 1950s and 60s, when I was buying wool at the mills, I would buy the scraps that were left over. And I would get them for $3 a pound, which was pretty good. And I was horrified that wool was then, the yardage was like $7 a yard. I don't know whether you know this or not, but since wool has now been being manufactured overseas, if you buy wool by the yard at the door mill, for example, you pay over $30 a yard. And right now I am braiding with wool that I never would have been able to afford years ago. And this is why. As people get older, they collect stuff. And if they're probably a lot of you have collections, and they all of a sudden they get rather large, and you're looking for more and more space. Well, in the case of me and the women I taught, you start collecting things when it's a good buy, particularly if you have places to store them. In Maine, you have we have those old barns that were sometimes connected to the house and so forth. So right now, people my age are dying and they've collected a lot of wool. In fact, I just got a notice from a woman in Turner. She isn't here, is she? I don't want to talk about someone if she's here. Not that I wouldn't, but anyway. She just got in touch with me saying, I used to braid rugs. I'm not going to do it anymore. I want to sell my wool perhaps if you don't want it, you will put me in touch with people who might be willing to buy it. The problem is the person dies, okay, they die. And then they have this store of wool. What are they going to do with it? So they try to sell it. And most of the time, the people that are braiding rugs now have all the wool they need. So in Pennsylvania, the wool I'm about to show you, camel hair. You've heard of camel hair years ago. In my day, in the 50s, when I was in college, we wore camel hair coats. I'm going to pass it around. Oh, by the way, did you know that you rip the wool? And some of it's harder to rip than others, but that's camel hair, so pass it around. I'm making right now, I didn't know whether I should bring this along because it's rather big and rather heavy, but the wool that's in this rug was being sold by a man in Pennsylvania who got in touch with our rug braiding guild. That's
Yeah,
okay.
and if you can move over,
What?
Nancy,
Oh,
one way or the other,
okay.
you're behind the pole.
This is 3 1-yard pieces of wool, okay? Except for the outer round part. What? Can't see it?
Yeah, thank you.
Can't see around the
okay.
pole.
Can't see around the pole.
There you go.
I don't know where to go, but somebody's gonna have to look.
I debated whether to bring this. Rug braiding is done in a very portable craft. Okay, so we can put it on the floor now. They are totally reversible, by the way, if they're laced together and not sewn, and they do wear for a long time. So anyway, the way we braid a rug is we start with a safety pin. Okay, these are 2 that are laced together, and I will be eventually adding it to that rug. But you can see it's very heavy, and I won't pass this around because it's rather bulky. But what we do, if you're not familiar with braiding, is we take, I brought a small thing, like so, and I started a braid that I can put around it. Okay, and then I will lace it onto the rug. And when it's laced, using a lacing thread, and you go through the loops, you do not stitch the fabric. That would be difficult, to pierce the fabric. The rug is totally reversible, and that makes it very long lasting. Anyway, the only problem with braiding is managing to take a strip that is like 1 3/4 to 2 to 3 inches wide. It depends on the heaviness of the fabric. And you, by having a stand that that gives you some stability when you go to use it. You sit and you can braid it. And there are such things as things that you can slide onto the wool strips that push the 2 edges together so they're entirely enclosed like a binding, so that when you braid with them, there are no raw edges. This is a very short, easy description of how they're done. Do you have any questions as I'm doing this? No, okay, that's good, maybe later on. Anyway, you get good enough at it so you can be very fast at it. It takes far less time to braid than it does to lace the rug together. And it was really wonderful because my husband, when he retired, helped me do this. And I did take on some rather large commissions to make rugs for people. And I'll tell you more about that. How are we doing time-wise here? We ought to get started with the thing. Okay, so the slide or whatever it is that we're about to see was made for the
You're gonna
guild
have
in
to
Pennsylvania.
have
We
that
now
out
have a
of the way of the screen.
we now have a guild that spans other countries. It has about 200 people that belong to it from all over the
Oh, that's
United
great.
States
Thanks.
and even a few from Europe. And it isn't one of those things that everybody's doing. And of course, when these when the source of wool shuts down and gets very expensive, it will probably die entirely because I don't think a lot of people are going to want to spend thousands of dollars to have a braided rug. But they will, if those of you that do it now, you can buy this wool for very inexpensive, and sometimes they just give it to you. They want to get rid of it and they do not want to sell it out. It's too precious. So, all right, my daughter is going to hopefully assist me on this. She's better at this than I am.
It's better.
I'm going to stand here with a mic.
I don't know if we can.
And just to
Bob?
explain, this was a Zoom presentation my mother did for the Fiber Arts group up here. And so we're gonna just show you some relevant pieces because she's talked you through a bunch of things. Of course, that was a different audience.
Yeah, may I just preface this with the fact it was done for the guild. So maybe some of the stuff there is a little beyond what you want to know or care about, but be patient. I hope some of them will interest you.
There's only one
Um,
person watching.
It was a journey for me. It was a wonderful thing when I retired up here with my husband that we could do together, do these rug camps.
We'll try it.
And
I think it's good.
I was one of the few people in the United States braiding rugs, amazingly. And people sought me out. In fact, someone still said today, aren't you going to do this anymore? No. It's going to be someone else now. And yes, I have quite a stash. It's like Jesus in the loaves, you know, people keep giving me fabric and it's hard to turn it down. But anyway,
Can you move
Like
the
this
thing
camel
or is it
hair
gonna
that is-
wreck everything?
there.
No,
Let
you
me just
can't.
tell
Never
them
mind.
about the camel
You're
hair.
fine. You can go back where you
This
were.
is, Kari, just a minute, I want to tell about the camel hair wool you see. There was a guy in Reading, Pennsylvania, who designed designer coats. And he was 75, he was selling the factory, he had to get rid of everything in it. So he got in touch with the president of our guild, and I thought, well, I'm gonna go along to look at it for just the sociability, that's kind of fun. And I walk in there and the guy has bolts of gorgeous wool, camel's hair wool. And he's selling it for $5 a yard. Oh, you know, I couldn't resist, I had to buy some, but it's that kind of thing that's going on now. So if you have anyone who enjoys braiding rugs and wants to do it, there are sources for wool, at least, I would say about 20 more years. Anyway, go ahead, Kari. Where are
Yeah,
we?
so we'll play for a little, about 10 minutes and then I'm gonna do a little skip.
For 10 minutes? What are you saying?
This first section is about 10 minutes before I'll do a pause and leave.
All right, go ahead.
Just to give you, tell me to stop anytime.
We'll go.
Can't tell you to stop.
We get along very well.
What's that?
So.
Yeah, it's fine.
My apartment, but, hit or miss, of course, because. I
That's
use it
me.
on the fabric.
Is the volume all the way up?
Can you hear that?
Would it work if mom's microphone went next to my computer?
Sure.
Yes, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, so we're
Not, well, you don't have to take it.
Well,
Just,
I'll give it to you.
yeah.
No, I've got another microphone here.
Oh,
Technology.
Oh,
that
that
will-
would. That one just a minute.
We haven't,
Maybe
oh,
it's
yeah.
fun trying to
We
set
found
the
it.
audio up here.
Perfect.
I'm not sure what you speak.
Let's see.
We put it, laid it right down on the speaker. on
See,
the-
that means something up there.
That way you can talk too, Nancy.
Anyway, this is a rug that is hit or miss, and I'm going on to the next one.
Okay.
We're not getting any.
The woman that helped Christine do this took the opportunity to put some of what I'm saying on the printed part so that anyone that goes to see it later can, follow that. But of course, I'm going to ignore that and pretty much say what I want to say when I look at each slide. Okay, that's a view of the outside of my house. It's not a big house. We built it on the site of a cottage. And it's a weird house, and then it's a 5-sided house, a pentagon. And we have great big windows up top, which are over the living room. And the full basement then is my workshop, and it's right on the lake, so we're very lucky. Next one, okay. Looking up the lake from my deck, it's a 7-mile-long lake, Maranacook. And on the right is another close-up of where you can see the dock and so forth. And of course, me on the front porch, naturally. And I tend those flowers very carefully, hoping they will last the entire summer so that everyone can see them. I've been very lucky in that I've had quite a few people visit me this summer, and that has always been fun. And go to the next slide. Picture my living room. I like whimsy, if you notice the goat over the fireplace. And yeah. Okay, we have a fieldstone fireplace, and I have braided rugs pretty much everywhere. This is on the hearth. This is under the flowers. These are on the tables. And of course, this big one, you'll see one later from an aerial view from the balcony, but these are rugs I made 30 years ago to go in the house when we first built it. As you can see, there are lots of big windows, and the big windows have nothing over them to keep the sunlight out. And I've been extremely pleased at the way the rugs have held up, exposed to the sun as they are. Whereas the living room, these have faded terribly. Next one. Okay.
Oh,
The what?
The commercial rep?
No, actually the quilts that this is a rug that I made 30 years ago when we built the house. And you can see some other things here, the braided pillows and so forth. This is a sheet box, which
How long did it take you to make the big one?
Oh, the big one? Oh, maybe 4 or 5 months.
That's all?
Yeah. Well, it goes fast. It really does. More experience, but faster. And if you can get someone to help you, like your husband, it really goes fast.
and Hanson made for me years ago, and she covered the outside with braids and painted loops on the top, which I can't see you. I can't show to you, but very talented woman. You'll see another picture of this, but basically I did some of it while I was in Maine, but I was still teaching school. And so I had to work in Pennsylvania and come up and add it when I got here. These are braids that I braided 4 of them and laced them together and then came up and applied them so that I didn't have too much work to do when I got
Can you
here.
stop just a minute?
But this,
One of the things that I learned how to do, and you'll see in this film, is get help making rugs. I didn't like doing it all myself. It's a lot of work. And I do love the community that gets together to do, like women quilting and so forth. So I figured out a way that I could join several braids together and then in Pennsylvania, bring them up at least on something that wide rather than one at a time and get lots of others to help. So go ahead, Carly.
see, okay. This is actually another view of the same thing, but from the balcony. And I'll talk more about these windows later. These are stained glass windows. And I've collected bottles that are all colored. As you can see, I really like color. And this is the rug in my bedroom, which is made out of blankets only. And it works very well. Of course, it's a very wide braid and very comfortable to walk on. So there's braided rugs everywhere. Now this one, okay. I braided pillow tops. I guess I covered everything with braids that I could. This is another look at the same rug I was talking about with the lumberjack plaid here. But if you can look, there are diamonds. When you join 4 rows, you get diamonds. I did one in red and black, green and black, and blue and black. Years ago, we had mills near Bethlehem that actually made garments, and we could buy the fabric from them for
The lumberjack plaid
and that was a wonderful
straps.
opportunity. Next one. Okay, an aerial view of the rug that is under the dining room table. And here is that's from the balcony on the right. And on the left, it's a side view from the side of the thing. When I made this rug, it was the late 1980s, and I don't know whether you remember that everything seemed to be rose and blue, wallpaper, all kinds of upholstery, everything you could, in fact, banks were decorated with rose and blue. I was getting so tired of rose and blue, so nevertheless, I used the color blue as a theme. And I'm glad I did, because it's kind of a good versatile slate to write on. I ordered 30 pounds of blue from the mill in Minnesota, and then used 1 strand of it throughout. Now this is actually light blue in here, and if you notice, there are diamonds in here, and there are diamonds here. And I again worked on this in Maine when we would be here, and then back in Pennsylvania, and added rose to it. And at one point in the rug, I'm kind of a good time asking people if they can find where I reversed the direction, because I was sitting on the inside and lacing, and then all of a sudden I had to sit on the outside to lace it, because of course the table was on the inside. So I reversed it, and of course I have people looking for the straight line between the rows, because when you lace every loop, you don't get straight lines between the loops. You instead get it kind of interlocking, and we all know that kind of thing. Okay, and that's the kitchen. Very small kitchen, and here is a cupboard. The house it's not a smart house. We picked the house because it was a shape it was to fit on the lot. And at the time we went about building it, which was in 1988, I inherited a cottage from a bunch of cottages that my dad built in Maine when he started a summer camp up here for families in 1940. And then people used to come and stay for a week with their family. And of course, I even to this day get people coming back to wonder where the place is. Well, of course, it looks quite different. I'll say more about that later, but my mother found that she couldn't run the camps after my dad died. So she sold them all, but three of them on the shore. And each of, I and my two brothers each got a cottage. And then, of course, later replaced it. All right, this is still inside the house. The hallway from the living room to the bathroom, which is right here, was trapezoidal in shape. A trapezoid, for some of you who may not remember from geometry class, is a four-sided geometric figure where two sides are parallel. So we had just worn out the carpet from here to there. And I looked around and decided I had 3 or 4 carpets of different sizes, why not put them together? So I did. There are 6 of them, are various sizes. And I laced together and put triangles in here. And then I could put a black row around the whole thing, sitting on the floor to do it, of course, and listening to the red door, by the way. And up the steps to the second floor where there's a balcony, I also have stair treads. Now, the stairs are rather narrow and rather steep. And people have said to me, you're just asking for a lawsuit. I guess I've been very lucky. I've never been sued, almost sued, but never really sued for anything. But anyway, I tell people when they go up the stairs here to hold onto the rail. And I think sometimes when you warn people that something's dangerous, they don't take it for granted. Anyway, I have never really had too many problems. Here's a close-up of going down. I do have sheer pieces of rubber underneath to give it some traction. But we don't actually, the thing that has problems right now, the steps are dogs because they kick them off. And then I have to replace them. Okay, and this is another view going down to the second floor. And here is a quilt I made some years ago, which is hanging on the wall. Hopefully that won't get bleached because it isn't right in the sunshine, but I'm always impressed at the way that cottons will bleach out and wool doesn't seem to have quite such a problem. Okay, so here's some more pictures of my living room. This is a fieldstone fireplace and a braided rug in front of it, braided rug under the a braided rug on the hearth. Yeah, the square one, that's that one. And here are 4 stained glass pictures. I love stained glass. I tried doing stained glass. And then I realized by the time I got good at this, I could pay someone very well to do it for me. And so I wisely hired someone to do it. And these are flowers from each of the 4 seasons, which I could choose. And a couple from Baltimore did it. And then when we sold our house, where they were in shutters in the kitchen and brought them up here, I had them redone so they could be on the living room. And I can raise the windows too. Whoops. Go back there. How do I do that? Okay, so anyway, they're installed in the window, but I can take them out. They're clipped in. And I love color, and that's another use of it there. And we have 2 sitting areas, one in front of the fireplace where we have a gas fire now, and one over on the other end of the room where I have the other braided rug. Okay, this is a close-up of the fireplace, and these are the weights, which I should be lifting, and I'm not doing anymore.
Gave them away.
And this rug is one that I am now making to replace the gray rug here, which is a 12 by 15 rug, which goes almost wall to wall from the fireplace to the opposite wall. And it's getting dirty. It's the 3rd rug I've had. And this rug I'm making so that it will completely surround the chair, 2 chairs, and the sofa, which is this end is up, which wears like iron.
So I think that's where you wanted to pause, Mom, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna advance.
By the way, the rug that you see mostly I call them hit or miss. They're random rugs. They don't have the ovals that are often associated with braided rugs. And those oval rugs with the patterns in it are very difficult to make because you have to have so much of a certain color in order to go all the way around. So if you want to make a rug inexpensively, you make something that is random. The quilters know all about that too. And they're pretty. What did you say I should do?
Just gonna start it where we were to pick up again.
Oh, we're going to pick up again now.
We skipped a little bit.
What?
We skipped a little.
Yeah, go
section.
ahead.
Yep. Let's see where it is. Whoops.
Pull up. So you'll forgive us if this isn't a professional operation, but
No problem.
Cover, you know, your chairs are actually sitting on them. Do you use a heavier wool? I mean, how do the chairs, how does it wear when you're like pulling the chairs on and off of
this
the
was a
rug?
question from.
Very well. I mean, people get up, they don't slide the chairs. You know, they get up. Now, my rugs are showing some wear. And I'm going to have to get them cleaned. And I'll talk more about cleaning later on because I actually wash my rugs in a commercial washing machine. Okay?
Okay.
But remember, you can reverse the rugs and turn them over. You get 3 or 4 different positions you can put the rugs in so that, and they're not that thick. No, I usually cut my fabric about, 2 1/4, 2.5 inches. And I use all kinds of fabric, all widths and all weights, except for rectangles and squares. That doesn't work well. Okay,
Let's see what's next.
okay.
Oh,
Now this is a bit of history, okay?
no, I'll talk
On the
about it.
left-hand side is the
Okay, the first rug I ever made is on the left, okay? The one I made in Maine. If any of you have a braided rug, usually one of the problems is it doesn't lie flat. Because we're not allowing enough extra loops as the rug grows to let them ease out. And so I don't know how many times I took the center of that out. I used it for years and years and followed a book that I'd gotten from a woman in Washington State. And eventually it ended up, of course, in our living room. And I finally gave it to the Historical Society in Quakertown. And it's still there. But kind of an interesting thing is when my daughter had a luau, a party for her birthday where I had a luau. Well, we had spaghetti, if you can believe that. A luau. Well, anyway, it was easy. And one of her friends tripped and spilled a whole plate of spaghetti on that rug. Fortunately, the woman who did this film was able to take out the stain. But anyway, so the Quakertown Historical Society has it out. The one on the right is the one that I made when Kari was a baby. That's me.
Yeah. It's a microphone, not you.
Should I try it again?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not you.
Anyway, years ago, there was a song called Lavender Blue Dilly Dilly. I don't know whether any of you are old enough to remember that. So when she was a baby, I made a rug. That's it. Lavender Blue Dilly Dilly.
Oh.
And through the years, we brought it up here, put it in the cottage. We rented the cottage. It was filthy dirty. And so when she grew up and moved into an apartment in Philadelphia, she needed a rug. And I said, why don't we get the one clean that's in our cottage? And I could not believe how well it cleaned because it was white. And I mean, it really looked good. A friend of hers saw it in her apartment and said, that's really different. Who made that? Well, my mother. Would she like to teach me? So that's how I got started back in teaching while I was still teaching school. And maybe I say this later on. It's a thrill to teach something when people want to hear what you say. It's very flattering. When you teach mathematics, and these were high school kids that were tech school, and you think that, you know, you're trying to persecute them, you know, do it personally, it's your fault. So I really enjoyed teaching rug braiding while I was finishing up with my teaching career in school. So that got me started again, and I found that there were still people interested locally. This is in Pennsylvania. So I went around to every high school, junior college, and all kinds of places teaching rug braiding and making up kits for the rugs because the mill up here had waste. And they would sell it to me for 25 cents a pound as long as I didn't go through it. It was huge bins. So every 2 weeks I would get down and get this wonderful thing from the mill, come in. I was then retired, by the way, and sort it out and make kits to sell to my students down there because I had to get rid of it so I could get more. There's a merchant in me somewhere. But anyway, it was fun. And it was a source of wonderful wool. I don't know whether go to the next
I
one.
kind of went past a little bit of your narrative on the Zoom, previous Zoom.
Okay,
So let me see where we pick up here.
this will be stories of wool.
Well, anyway, that's how I got started. And that's a picture of my rocking chair on that rug. Now I want to go down one more. Okay.
Oh, this is a
Alright,
picture of
so
the
I
rug
got
braiding.
rug-
Stop. This is in my basement, and this is some of the people that are down there working. On the right is something called leader cloth. Leader cloth, it turns out, is used by the woolen mills so that they don't have to painstakingly feed the new wool through the rollers when they can join it with a piece of fabric that's sewn onto it. And therefore it feeds naturally by being attached to a piece of fabric that they make out of all the scraps they have. And it makes wonderful rug braiding stuff because of course it's colorful. You need color in a rug, and of course, years ago, most of the wool was not bright colors, they were dark. I mean, it made sense, winter, dark clothing, they didn't show the dirt and so forth. So anyway, that's the story of that, and when the mill went out of business here, I was called one day by, I guess it was Lou Courier, who said, we have a whole pile of stuff in the back there. Would you be interested in it? And I came down and said, yes, definitely. So I had one of my rug camps go down and we bought it all. I wish I should have bought it all myself, because this is like a bank account, you know. Well, when something's gonna disappear, and it has. Okay, go ahead, Corey, maybe the next one.
So you're throwing me a little bit, so I'm just gonna give it a shot here, see where we are.
Okay.
You're getting old with me. Well, anyway, but then, never seen before.
Where
The
we
mill
go?
actually wove cloth out of their leftover yarns and then used it
Yeah, well,
to
that,
stitch together the different, maybe some of you want to comment on.
just keep
You're
going.
almost
Okay,
likely to be in the newspaper.
so I came to Maine, my husband and I retired up here in '93. And I came to Maine and I was lamenting the fact that everyone knew how to braid rugs in Maine. I had lost my, the people who were interested. And it turns out that wasn't so. I advertised, I decided, now this is on there, but I'll just talk. Okay, you can.
Go for it.
I was, as I said, thinking, well, maybe people would come here to learn. Dave and I had done a lot of Elder Hostel, it used to be, Road Scholar programs, and we loved them, and they were very inexpensive. And I thought, well, why couldn't we do a Road Scholar program here? So I advertised in Quilter's newsletter and got 7 people that came, and I charged them what we paid at that time, $300 for the 5 days. If any of you have done that, you know it's gone up a lot. So anyway, my husband said, well, I don't mind if you try it as long as 2 things. I don't have to entertain the husband. And as long as you don't lose money on it, because I had done some things that were not good investments. So anyway, we started out and I realized that charging $300 for 5 days, and I had to use a motel and getting the meals catered, that I would be definitely losing money. So I'd already charged what I was going to charge, so I couldn't change that. So he said to me, well, I like to cook. If you tell me what to do, I'll cook. So bingo, we had a very good partnership for the years that we did this together. He enjoyed the women, who of course thought he was wonderful, and what man doesn't like that? And we met a lot of very interesting people. There were only a few lemons on the way, and there are bound to be some, but many of them became lifelong friends. And the band of people who braid rugs are kind of special. They're they like cheap things and making things work and finding, other than maybe other crafts, which are a little more elite. So anyway, here is an article that was in the Kennebec Journal about rug braiding. And it isn't hard to get things in the Kennebec Journal because of course it's a small paper and there isn't that much excitement locally, maybe, hopefully. Okay, Car, go on.
So I think what I'll do, Mom, just with time, is I'm gonna forward to some slides and you can probably just talk through them versus
Okay,
playing the video.
Okay, go
So
ahead.
this is,
Go ahead. Oh, this is something my husband did, the hook center, and I put a braided piece around it. Now this is a little different from the normal braid. It's called a multi-strand braid. When you braid, you use 3 strands. If you do a multi-strand, you use more than 3, 4, 5, 12. You can even use as many as 21. And it gives you a zigzag look like that. I have something up here I'll hold up. Well, wait a minute now. This is many multi-strands, okay? And this is rather a difficult thing to do. I won't do it again. And it isn't going to wear as well as a traditional rug. But so many women like things that, well, that we've done that, let's do something different. And so this is an attempt to kind of capture them with a new idea. I had a newsletter when you had to type it and send it out with a stamp. And in each newsletter, I would put a new idea for braiding, which kept me busy trying to think of things. Now, of course, it's all email, and that makes it a lot easier. So anyway, I did put a braid around it, so I have several of his pieces that he's done. The hook piece in the center, I think, is very nice. Go ahead, Carl.
The next story is about the children.
Oh, the children. I think of all the braiding things I've done, I've been happiest with this. I don't know whether any of you even remember that, but it was around 15 years ago. A woman in a school in Augusta came to me. She had been a lawyer and her husband had passed away. Her only son had gone to college and she decided she wanted to do something besides law in Portland. So she came to me asking if I could possibly teach a class how to braid a rug. She asked for a very difficult class and they gave her one at the Gilbert School in Augusta. I don't know how familiar you are with that, but it's a very poor section of Augusta, to be blunt. I'm told I shouldn't use words like that, right, for sections, but you know, the mill people lived there. And many of the kids in this class had parents, a parent who was fighting in the Iraq War. And so I said, yeah, we can do that because I had gotten groups to do rugs before, not sixth graders, but adults. So I went in and the first lesson was showing them braided rugs like I was telling you and showing them how it was done and said, this is what we're going to do. And I used blankets that had been given to me. And we didn't turn the edges in because you can't get kids to do that fine of work and be fussy over something that's, you know, you wanted to get done. Anyway, there were 20 kids in the class, only 4 were girls. And you can see them there. That was not the size of the rug when it ended up. It was the size that when the newspaper came in, because they got wind of this and thought it would be a good story. This is the article that was in the paper. Here's a close-up. And the kids, we had a celebration when the rug was done. I took a friend with me who had taken braiding from me. She was very good, Bobby Mahler. I thought maybe she might be here tonight. But she is actually an incredible rug braider. But anyway, she had been in the Navy, retired from the Navy and taught in a Baltimore school. She was pretty tough. So she came with me for this class. I had asked another woman to come, but after one session, she was too busy. I think she didn't want to be involved. So anyway, we told them the basics of braiding and twice a week we went in and we had about an hour to spend with the kids and we braided a big rug. It was 8 by 10 when we finished and we celebrated when it was over. I'm thrilled because I think what you learn in that situation, you never forget. I don't think they'll ever forget this rug. And they know a little more than they did before. It didn't end up well, and I won't go into detail about that. The teacher did not come back the next year. I don't know where the rug is. I was never asked where it should go or whatever. She said it was just not an option to leave it in their library. So I don't know where it is, but a year later, she sent me a great big parcel and in it was this. And each page is what a kid wrote to me about being so thankful. And some of them are, you know, rather good and others are not. There were some kids in there that was probably no doubt, but they looked at it as the magic rug, you know, the dinosaur and all. And I was thrilled to get it. And this guy called it Rugzilla. And, you know, dear Mrs. Young, thank you for the awesome experience. I had fun and I'm sure that the whole class, including Mrs. Russell, had a wonderful time. I enjoyed making the rug. We had been working more than a team instead of working individually, blah, blah, blah. So I'm really pleased with that. Let's go on to
The next story is about the jeans.
Oh, the jeans rug. Okay. Are you taking the? You moving? Okay. In the early 90s, my name got in the New York Times, and I was getting some interesting calls. Anyway, a designer found that I braided rugs, called me and asked me if I would be willing to braid a rug of denim jeans for a client in Martha's Vineyard. I said, oh, how big? And she said, well, rather large. It was to be 12 by 18. And I thought, well, that's a large rug. I'm not doing it all by myself. So I thought, I'll have to pay the people that help me. I have lots of friends that braid, but they won't do a lot for nothing. I mean, you know, that's a little extreme. So anyway, I quoted them a price of $400. And I thought that'll turn them off totally. No, they wanted it. Now, this was the designer that got that. My sister-in-law, who worked in the merchandising industry, probably said that people probably paid her twice that amount. She was the one that found the thing. Anyway, the living, it was a game room, a Martha's Vineyard, and the sofas were upholstered in denim piped with green, and then pillows made of quilts. And then they wanted a denim rug for the floor. So on the right, it says we were making the rug in a barn, and that kid there is now 30 years old. Okay, so what I did was I found 12 people who would be willing to do this. I forget what said I would pay them, but I figured it out. And they did it. And I always do the center. And I don't know whether you can see, but up here, there's like little red spots there and there. She gave me about 8 pairs of their jeans that she wanted in it to personalize it. So I washed them and we put them in it, and then I marked them with a little piece of red cloth, which I stitched. Anyway, we finished the rug, and Dave and I drove it to her on Martha's Vineyard. She didn't want to tell me what her husband did. Of course, I asked her twice, and when she didn't answer, you knew she was. But as we got on the ferry, which he arranged for us to get there over, evidently he was an executive with Merrill Lynch, and he obviously flew back and forth between New York. But I found out that rich people will pay a lot of money for something that's very individual, that no one else has. I thought I would be famous. I mean, no,
You are.
I made her a little notebook to go with it, showing the people that worked on it and everything and so forth. I don't know what happened to the rug, but I said, you know, this thing's going to fade. It shouldn't see a lot of light. And you can see in this room, it's all windows. It's probably white. But anyway, it was kind of exciting to do that. Okay, Carl. Go ahead.
So sun in,
What?
the sun in.
The sun in. Oh. In Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, we have a very historic inn that was built in 1757. And I was teaching rug braiding in Bethlehem, and we had braided rugs for the Cancer Society to sell to raffle off. And we did not feel that they were selling enough tickets to make it worth our while. Let's do something where a historic place would benefit from it. We could go visit it. And so we decided we would ask this inn that was being taken down for a bank. This is an inn where George Washington really did stay. Lafayette recovered from his wounds. Because Bethlehem is on the way from Boston to Philadelphia. It was the perfect stop, you know, as they rode between the two places. Anyway, I went in and she gladly accepted my offer to make them a rug. Now, the one on the right there, I'm living in Maine at the time, but I got, again, 12. Maybe it's the disciples, I don't know. But anyway, I got 12 people to help me. And I gave each of them a section of the rug to make. If you do it mathematically, you know how much longer each round should be in order that you can make the rug grow. So when I had that information for them, I could give Jenny braid 3 25-foot braids and lace them together 1-to-1, no increases, and get it to me by this time. And so they were to use their own fabric because I was not supplying that, and it was to be dark fabric because the period was dark fabric during the 1800s, and good fabric and no wild colors. So anyway, we didn't know what it would look like until it all came together. We put it together in one weekend when I went down to Bethlehem. We all met and we could all lace on it at the same time because we do something called budding. Budding is taking a braid and joining it together so you don't see where it is, which is a very advanced idea. And many years ago, they didn't do that. They just made it continuous. With a continuous rug, you're really stuck with one person because you can't get more people to help you. And so this worked rather well. So that's the rug there. That's what it looked like. The rug on the left is the second one we made with all new wool from the mill up here. And in that rug, excuse me, the very last, well, some of the rounds we put in it brown and white to see how University is in Bethlehem. We put in blue and gray because Moravian University is in Bethlehem. And then we put in the flags that went with the high school there, band. They used the one of the English flags. So there's a few things in it, which most people know they won't do it. But anyway, they're looking very good. And it's about 25 years now. And go to the next one, Karen. We braided 3 large rugs.
Yeah, so the next one talks about the newspaper article.
Yeah, this is the last rug. Now, the other rugs were free. We gave them all our labor and the wool. But I was rather upset at the woman that was running the inn, because the only thing I asked was get us some new newspaper publicity for the people that are doing this and that you're getting a gift. And I would go back to Bethlehem and she hadn't done anything and I was writing the article. So I thought, that's it. Until a friend who had to leave her home and go into an apartment and have all this wool. I said, you know what? If she's willing to pay for it, we'll sell her all the wool that you've left and make a rug for the place. And this was 8 foot wide by 18 foot long, a really odd, you're not gonna. So anyway, we got that all together and in one weekend we joined it. You can see how many of us are working on the rug. At the time we were doing that, the police were coming in because the guy that ran the restaurant there had evidently stolen some stuff and it was kind of, it's running well now.
Hidden in the rug.
And the rug over here is the most recent one we made for another place in the inn. It's fun to have a group project, Okay, Car, go on with what's next. Oh, this is a rug I made when I lived in Ephrata, which had a factory there that had a lot of wool scraps in red, white, and blue. And that's now also in the Quakertown Historical Society. Keep going.
I'm gonna show the thing in a second.
There's one, we made one for the library here, the Bailey Library has a rug that was made 15 or 20 years ago by the women I taught up here. It's unfortunate because the brass plaque that I had written all the names got lost after the place burned and they moved all the bookcases and they somehow can't find it. I can't even remember who the people are. I do know many of them are gone, Mary and Healy and many people have died. All right, this is a bunch of those. I brought some things to show you. There isn't much more. Oh, this
Yellow basket.
one on the right. Okay, that is a bit of history. I made that when my son, who's now 67, made that when he was a baby. And it had been cleaned several times professionally with the beaters. And I decided if it was to be done that way again, it would take more of a beating than I wanted it to have. And I washed the smaller rugs in my tumble washing machine, and I used the commercial one up here. And I was told as long as the dry weight is less than the capacity of the machine, I could put it in. And so I thought, okay, this was a 10-foot round rug. It needed to be washed. I took it apart, and what I hoped would be too even, I was close. It's hard to calculate that, even though I taught math. Anyway. So that's the series. I put it in the washing machine and then we put it out on the deck, laid it out, and I was going to wait about 2 days till it dried out. And I went to bed thinking I will do it tomorrow, and it poured rain that night. When you get wool wet, it absorbs several times its weight. So what to do? I couldn't hang it because the lacing wouldn't take it. So I managed to put it up on a little picnic table little by little, and a couple days later I laced it together, but it went together well. And when you wash a rug, it really gets clean, and you use a tumble washer, not an agitator, and very little soap, and put a couple towels with it. So that's the story on the right. Here, sitting up there and here, you can braid anything as long as it's a strip. So this is fabric from the place in Monmouth that makes tennis ball covers. This is wool from there. It's very heavy and it comes in wide pieces, and I cut it so that it was about 1 inch wide. Did not have to turn it in. You can pass it around. But I went and taught a 4th grade class how to do that. Now I won't say they looked like that, but it was an experience and I enjoyed it. It was down around Leeds somewhere. This is a rug that was not braided by me. It was braided by the Amish in Pennsylvania of nylon stockings. Why don't we pass some of these around? Oh, that's okay. Thank you.
I didn't want you.
But thank you. Well, that would not be a good, that would not be a good. This is a square, which a little more difficult to make than an oval, but certainly not impossible at all, with a multi-strand border, giving it a little more zigzaggy look. This is braided a fabric that isn't all wool. Chair pad, of course, and this is made from wool from the Warumbo mill. Do any of you remember the Warumbo mill in Lisbon Falls? Yeah. Oh, there were some wonderful mills around here, and I used to take my students to see these mills while they were working. And it was, they never let me in Carlton, but I did the other mills, so it was rather thrilling. Here is well, here's one with braided with one strand of other fabric. It's a heart. By the way, hearts make wonderful wedding gifts for people who are getting married and you know they won't get two of them. And this is really heavy wool. People that are into wool often call me when they want to do what to do with the stuff they have. And this was a guy up in they made blankets up on the way to Bangor, Newport. Okay. And again, he bought this thing and he had all this wool left in the mill. What to do with it? So he said, do you think you can make rugs out of it? And I said, let me take some and I'll show you. And I said, yes. Then he said, what should I charge for it? I said, well, if you want to get rid of it quickly, 50 cents a pound. If you want to take your time, you can charge more. And so my students went up there and really took truckloads back. That really heavy stuff. And of course, this stuff is gonna wear forever. This is a sample of denim, which is braided with no weight, not turning anything in. And this is just a little sample of.
Sure do feel nice, don't they?
You do triple. Right, and then left, or left. Depends on whether you're, if you're openings. Yeah. Okay.
So Mom, you're at 1 hour, and all that really follows are some more samples. So if there's any particular rug you want me to show.
Okay, well, let me go through this stuff here because I brought it. This is a basket made of old jeans. Why don't I start some? Oh, well, why not? You can do a lot of things when you braid. We've braided hats. We've had competition with our guild on braiding vegetables, bathing suits. One woman braided the LLB boots. It's a pity because just recently there was a display of all the Maine braiders at the Fiber Arts in Topsham. In Topsham, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the Fiber Arts is in an old bank building, and they do a wonderful job of trying to expose all the people in Maine that do crafts with fiber. And they had a special review of Maine braided rugs, and it was really great. I tried to get it into the museum in Augusta, but they're not going to be open for another 2 years because they're taking all the bad stuff out of it and redoing the whole thing. So, so what else is there? More pictures. Okay, here's a rug made of many squares. I mean, you can do incredible things if you're imaginative and clever. Keep going, Corey.
Oh, thanks, Bob.
Just keep moving through it. Needless to say, I have an awful lot of braided rugs.
I think you covered.
Pretty well.
Yeah.
So there's a braided heart with a multi-strand braider, and I give those for wedding gifts. And usually they respect them and keep them. Oh, the one there is the one here. I don't know where that one is.
Here's one.
Someone said, how many of you braided? I have no idea. It's one of those things. It's still, frankly, it's a wonderful exercise. You're up and down. You have to sew the strips together either by hand or by machine. You're sitting on the floor, you're lacing, you're not doing little things like the needlepoint and everything. I think it's a very healthy craft, if I'm interested in any of you. I do have here, just a sheet of paper, because if some of you are interested in learning,
That one's gonna go.
no, I don't teach it anymore. Obviously, I'm getting pretty old. Okay. So if you're interested in learning, well, I'm running out, so it's good on me.
Yes.
Information you might like that about the craft of rug braiding, day to day. The best place to learn is the Valley Forge Rug Braiding Guild, which is the only one in the United States. The woman who's president, who has devoted her life to it, she's really a doctor, but she doesn't have to be a doctor anymore, and still young enough to be very active. They have a wonderful guild. There's so much on television now, the Zoom, not television, computer. And the Zoom instructions are really wonderful, instructing you how to do it. And they give you sources and they answer questions. I put down the names of 3 women in Maine who might be willing to talk about braiding a rug for order. And I also put down something to tell you something about the cost of doing this. Right now, if you can get wool for free, it's a pretty doggone good thing. And also, I use many weights of wool. I don't have to have all the same weight of wool, because if you have a thinner weight, you can cut it wider and then you can put a filler in it of another piece of wool. And it's a little more work, and you fold it over, but you can use that many, many layers. So you can use almost anything. I do like to make it 80% wool. There are mixtures, blends. In fact, nylon is very, durable. It doesn't wear thin because it's a synthetic fiber, but it doesn't have the resilience. So to give you an idea, no woolen mills are made in the United States, and isn't that sad? It's really awful.
Oxford's out now.
Oxford imports all their wool. So does Pendleton. So does Dorr.
We used to go to one, it was up above Skowhegan. It was a woolen mill in a small town. They used to make coats. And they had a store there. It was $2 a pound. They had barrels and stuff there.
Wow.
I made huge, big ones.
Did you really? You could probably add something to this. Would you like to? I mean,
No, but I've got 7 rugs now that I don't know what to do with. I've been doing it for as long as you have. I was pregnant with my daughter.
I'm older than you are, but
I don't think so.
I'm 91.
What?
Yeah. That's right, people.
When I started, I took 3 lessons. Wow. And then that was it.
You probably could sell them,
Well,
but
I have a few of them, but I've got them all over I live in a log cabin, so it looks great everywhere. And I've just got 7 of them at my son's house under his bed. I wanted to sell them someplace. I mean, we were supposed to bring it out to the coast of someplace that sells Maine-made things, and we never got there this summer. So I don't know what they look like. They're not huge.
well, that's good. It's hard to sell a very large rug.
Yeah, well, I got rid of all those years ago. I used to put my name for the dining room, the living room, that was back when I got on my hands and knees.
Yeah. Look at you're
But,
still here.
But the thing is, I've never used one of those. I took that thing out the first week I had it. And I put some of these, fold it in,
Yep.
and I figured, that's the exercise, body, and then I'm lacing it, so, you get a lot of exercise.
You do.
So I'm not
It's
giving it up. I made a small one last year, because just the colors I had, but I still got, I have some different, which I like, but I'm looking for more.
well, I'll give you the name of the woman from Turner, because they're not going to sell it. They'll probably end up giving it away. She has 16 bins.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, well, who wants 16 bins of wool?
Oh, boy, I would
So volunteer.
yeah,
Graders.
yeah.
Well, you should probably give me your names. And
I'd love to
here I
go.
have the thing of the Valley Forge Rug Braiding Guild. You really should join it. It's only $30 a year. Most of the women that are doing this in the 50s and 60s have a lot of energy. During the COVID thing, I think there were 16 of them that braided circles, and certain people put them together, and then they were chanced off. I didn't do it. I said it will fail. It didn't. They did make a lot of money. Anyway, if you're interested, here's some information. But I just wanted to tell you that these are loose figures, but the rug I showed you took 3 1-yard pieces of wool so you can see how much you can get out of a yard of wool. wool is 60 inches wide also. It's not just 48 inches wide. And of course, when you buy a yard of wool, you get more than a yard because the width is bigger than cotton. But anyway, generally speaking, if you're gonna make an 8x10 rug, I have this here, the 8x10 braided rug will run, will take about 1 yard of wool weighs about, I'm gonna get this mixed up. I'm gonna hand this out if you want it up here. Generally speaking, if you're gonna make an 8x10 rug, it's gonna cost you about $1,800 just for the fabric if you pay $30 a yard.
Wow. How do you cut? Never
Oh,
done it, never.
it's like 4 ways of doing it.
It's going, and I'll go in a while and I'll go.
Why don't we meet and I'll show you? You know, it took a long time to learn how to bring a braid together so you don't have an end or a
I
beginning.
can't see it, I've seen cracks in the there and I never could find out where they put it. And I'm just fascinated.
Isn't that wonderful? And that's, I talked one day at a group of the designers, the Couturier Society in Allentown. And I thought, like the usual 5 people. No, it was an auditorium. And I'm up there, I went by myself because I usually like someone to come and hold the rugs for me. And at the end, I talked about butting and they came up immediately. How do you butt? I said, wait, I can't tell you that. Really, there's a bit to it. It's not the bad. It's very easy when you learn how.
Is that in your book, Mom?
In my book, yes.
Oh, where's your books?
I have 2 of my books. Now, my books are very old. I don't even know if,
They're
are
right-
they here?
Yeah, they're right there underneath your stuff.
These,
Do you have them?
I did this book about 20 years ago when I thought we started doing the national gatherings in Pennsylvania. And we still do them, although I don't know now with Zoom and all that we want to do them every year. But anyway, I did this because, oh my God, I'm going to go there and they're going to expect me to know stuff. I better put it down so that I have some of the patterns that I came up with. And so I did that in a book, but it says a manual for experienced rug braiders who want more. I have 2. If you want them, you'll pay what I paid for them, which is $10. But those are the only 2 I have left. There is a wonderful, very much more elaborate. There's several on the market that these very brilliant young women, the one being a doctor, have written. It's $40. Beautiful pictures and everything. But I would say if you really want to learn how, you should go there, and they have Zoom and people to help you, and it's wonderful. And you see all these people, they're like there all over the country. There's even one in Germany. I mean, it's really cool.
You know Bobby then. very well.
Bobby Mahler. Oh, Bobby has taken my place.
She's
Yes.
a friend of my friend in with Belgrade. I live in Rome.
Which one? Kathy
Ann Bell,
and Bill. I don't
she's a
know.
very good friend of hers. And
Bobby is
and
excellent.
I've seen some of Bobby's work, and
She's
even the baskets and.
Very
even,
special.
You know, I get.
Yeah.
But
There's
she must buy it by the bolt or something. I think.
Bobby has collected a lot of wool. She took my place at the Common Ground Fair a few years ago, and now they don't do rug braiding there. They can't find a braider to demonstrate. It's hard to
I
do.
had a lot of people years ago, the last time I saw it, it was beautiful.
Yeah, she has a wonderful stash of wool.
Do they
What?
still have the exhibit at the Fine Works?
What,
Do
honey?
they still have the exhibit of the rugs? and
No,
patterns?
the exhibit ended at the end of this past month, unfortunately. It was very, Bobby was a major part of that. Bobby, she's teaching basket making.
Oh, yeah. she-
And yeah, there are some very talented women. And I've met some wonderful friends. You're tapping your watch. It's time.
Well, I don't know if
Do
anybody
you have
has
any more
questions.
questions?
So I took a couple classes with you back in the 90s and you wouldn't recognize me because it's when I had black hair, which is gone.
What's your name?
I'm Nancy Swanson. My father's part of the Historical Society.
Oh my
and
goodness.
I came to you with a rug that looked like a hat.
Yeah.
And you helped me unhat the rug.
Looks like a hat.
And I just forgot what question. But it was such a pleasure to
Well, thank
study with you and be in your home and see all the
It was
rugs
fun.
that you had. Oh, it was so much fun.
Met a lot. Women are
And
fun.
oh, I know, I was just
No
gonna,
offense.
there was a man.
Men are okay too.
There was a man in our class, an older man with a beard, and I can't remember
Is it a
his
husband?
name.
Didn't you have a man?
Like, I've had several men, yeah. I had a guy from New York who was, forgive me, gay. He came because he had had a whole lot of climbing rope and wanted to braid mats out of it. And he brought it along and we could braid with it, but the problem was getting it together. So we weren't very good at that. He ended up, I think, clipping it together, but he was interesting. Very good looking. Yeah.
What? My sister made it braided decades ago. And she still has it, but it's coming apart. The braid, not the braids themselves, but I think the lace.
Oh, that will be easy.
And
We'll talk about it. I'll help
I
you.
wasn't sure if that was something that.
Or are you friends? You could do it.
No.
No, they're just sitting together.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we might be friends, but.
They give her the Bobby Denver, she wants to have it fixed. She does a lot of that.
There's one woman that does a beautiful job with repairing. She has MS and there's some fabulous rug braiders, but there's not many. I mean, and now all this wool, like this woman in Turner. If you were interested, give me your name.
I'd love to see if I could get some, I hate the some.
Well, you don't tell her that first.
No. I gotta tell you about where I went here and then. Yeah, but,
We had someone come in here asking about repairing some braided rugs that they had, an older gentleman and he and his wife. And we had no idea where to send them,
Well, there is
If
one.
you know of anybody.
Yeah, I do know.
they come back.
Pam Rowan will repair rugs and she does beautiful work. And
That would be-
I repaired a number of rugs myself, but it's not much.
Yeah.
Nancy.
What?
I told you I had a house full of braided rugs.
Yeah.
They're about 30 years old. And one of them is 10 by 12.
Oh, wow.
And the yellow is the cinnamon underneath.
The dye, would be the dye.
The dye, green will cause that, but yellow, where do you live? Here? Why, you know, in this thing, I have an email address on the paper. I didn't know how many to make, but if you think you'll really use it.
Oh, I made some too, Nancy. Did you get the ones I made?
Okay, well, I'm here all summer. So maybe I can help you. Oh, that's right, you're Gail's. Gail's a older what?
We traveled 10, 12 years ago a lot to New Brunswick, Canada. And they had a woolen mill in either Black Harbor or Black's Harbor. I don't know if they have a website or not, but we went to see their finished products that they had made. It was very nice.
A woolen
A
mill,
woolen mill. Yeah.
an operating woolen mill.
Yeah. We didn't go to the mill. We just went to the outlet, but there was supposed to have been a mill up there somewhere.
Wow, if there is, oh, this is the thing that I saw there. If you're interested, braided rugs, if they're all wool, can be washed, and it's on the wash on cold water. Don't use woolite, use very little soap. Put a towel or two in with it and put it on the, most gentle side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right in that way. This way, she don't want to put that in that.